Welcome to episode 3 of Terrier Talk. I'm joined today by our two head rugby coaches, Tony Solis and Farrah Douglas. I'm excited to have you guys on today and talk about your fall season.
Thanks for having us, Mac.
Thanks.
So, Tony, I'll start with you. Tell us briefly about your first fall season here, and including format, or touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, so for our men's team, we decided to start with a fall 15 season. It was something that, we really wanted to do as a program. And so we chose to enter what's called the Champions Cup, which is the highest level of Division III competition in the country. That leads to a national championship pathway. There are two others, Challenge and Development, and most of the other teams in Maine are in the Challenge Cup. But that was a step that we wanted to take, was to really try and test ourselves, and so that's where we competed this year. It was definitely a season full of a lot of learnings for the players, but also for myself as a coach and managing a wide variety of experience levels. And I think every single man on the team learned something that they probably didn't think they would necessarily. And of course, the Americans are learning how to play rugby from scratch. But I think a lot of our international students took away some learnings on how to interact with teammates and that are learning from scratch, and kind of what that takes to communicate effectively as a group.
Mm-hmm. That's a good answer. I know just from my, when we had our home match here, the doubleheader, that was awesome. And you could tell it was new, not just on the field, but off the field too. The amount of people looking, like, turning their heads a little bit like, this is new, this is interesting. But I think people really enjoyed it, and that goes for you too, Farrah. I think it was, we had a ton of fans out here, and it creates a good atmosphere.
For sure.
Farrah, if you want to.
You're up.
Yeah. If I can repeat the question if you need me to.
No.
Okay.
I won't make you do that.
Okay.
So our first season was more a development season for the women. We have a similar structure to the men, where we will play 15s traditionally in the fall and a competitive 7 season in the spring. Both seasons, you typically are competing for postseason eligibility. But given that we were in our first inaugural season, not building out from an existing club program, which is traditionally what happens when women's rugby is elevated to the NCAA level or varsity. So we went developmental, which meant we were focusing on 7s. We started our season with a roster of 10. In 7s, you traditionally will roster 12 people. You're allowed 5 subs. So we came into it a little short. By the end of preseason, we had taken on a few injuries. So we went into our season with a solid 7 athletes, which on paper doesn't necessarily translate to a lot of on-field success, because 7s is a fairly fast-moving version of the game. It's same size fields as we play 15 on 15, but you are covering that amount of distance with 7 players. And we had a phenomenal season. We went undefeated. Can't complain as a coach. It's really good when you have a brand new sport on campus. I think my athletes had to learn a lot. They were their own subs. I have been in that shoe myself. It's not always fun. So I think they learned a lot about themselves, that where they can dig in, and it was a great foundation to build from our program. It's drawn a lot of interest from outside the program in terms of on campus, people asking more questions about rugby, and just, I think, recruitment in general.
Yeah. No, that's awesome that you guys both had successes in your own ways, in your own formats this fall. Like I said before, it's awesome to see all these new programs here, especially new varsity programs like both of yours, and to see that there's building blocks and there's positive takeaways to take into the spring and take into next fall and whatever that may look like. So Tony, I'll ask you this. What inspired you to take this job in the first place and build up a brand new rugby program? Because you and I both know, hopefully our audience knows, that's not easy. Taking from no rosters, like Farrah touched upon.
I like challenges more than anything. I think, the biggest thing for me was the opportunity to build something with, a team that had no history around it. I mean, I've coached at a few different places, and they all have their own unique histories. And in some places I was a part of that history. But here was a chance to kind of, plant our flagpole in the ground and build ourselves up from that 0 point to what we hope to become, which is, very competitive on the national stage. And so, it was an opportunity to really recruit the type of people that I would love to have on a rugby team and that I would love to coach. And, that is absolutely what ended up happening. At the end of the season, kind of the last little huddle of the game this past weekend, it was, me just expressing to the team that I couldn't have asked for a better group to take on the challenge with. Because, they were all so resilient and gritty. And that's ultimately what you need a rugby team that's going to be successful to have as a backbone, is to just be tenaciously gritty and to never back down from the challenge in front of them. And so I think our season epitomized that, and that's something that I thoroughly have enjoyed in my life, which is taking on things that are not easy to do.
That's a great answer. Farrah?
There you go, madam.
My turn. I think similar things. My previous role, I elevated a Division I program from club to NCAA. I think for me, I took some time off from coaching, wasn't sure I wanted to actually go back into it, and I sort of got stalked to apply for the position here by my college coach and a few other colleagues who are still actively coaching within NIRA, which is our sort of association that makes sure that we are moving forward for the needle for getting full sponsorship as a NCAA sport. So when I applied, really, I think what influenced me the most was I am a D3 athlete myself. I went to Bowdoin to run cross country, which I quit. That's why I found rugby, which is another story. And I did indoor and outdoor track. So I think when I initially interviewed, it reminded me what was really special about that experience, that I think the D3 environment is very much true to the mission about whole person development. And I was a happier athlete, and I think definitely a much happier coach being able to be in that space. And I think that the other part of it for me was having a lot more ownership in those building blocks, that the successes and failures that we will have as a program will be solely on my shoulders. I'm not trying to correct the past, or I guess inherit someone else's like history and the baggage that comes with it. And I'm not trying to change culture. I'm trying to build culture, and it's a collaborative process for me. So the athletes I've chosen, I spend a lot of time talking to them and getting to know them as people, because I think for me, on-field success doesn't matter if you don't have good character and people that understand everyone brings value to the table, regardless of their experience with the sport. And knowing in the D3 environment that we're going to have to pull a lot in the early years from campus, character was a big thing. And the same with Tony. I couldn't have asked for a better group of athletes to kickstart this process. And that it's just my way of giving back to the game. I've been involved in rugby for a really long time, coaching, administrating. I'm a referee. That's terrible for everybody. But I've been involved in a lot of different levels of the game, and for me it's always kind of giving back, because rugby, I think, fundamentally changed my life, and being able to give that joy to other athletes is what drives me as a coach.
Yeah, that's a great answer. So you touched upon getting into rugby, and I think that's something that I want to ask both of you, and Farrah, I'll start with you because you touched upon it a little bit. Let's take a step back and be like, or think of, how did you get into rugby? And where did you go with rugby, and how did that lead you here?
Okay. So my background, sport-wise, I danced for a long time, and then I played volleyball, basketball, soccer were my big sports, and I fouled a lot in basketball, so I could only play first and fourth quarter. Otherwise, I was gone. And when I started playing soccer, I was this little chubby girl with glasses that were too big for my face, and I wore a sport band, and I was the only girl for a really long time, so the boys picked on me. So I learned how to slide check fast, and I got a lot of yellow cards. So I definitely was like moving this towards contact. And then I went to a high school. They didn't have girls soccer, so the cross country coach came out and was like, "Do you want to run cross country?" I was like, "Oh, I've done the walk for hunger, sure. What's cross country?" And she said, "Oh, you just run 3 miles." So I said, "Sure, okay." I went to my first practice, and they were doing 600-meter hill sprints. I came home and was like, "Mom, I don't want to do this." And like all good parents, she said, "You signed up for it, so you're in it." And when I applied for colleges, that's what I was going to do, was run cross country. And I had, through cross country, found track and field. I was a multi. I did distance, middle distance, sprints, field events. So I was a heptathlete and pentathlete at Bowdoin. Cross country, I'm not really like built for cross country, which is kind of like an interesting thing about my adult self right now. So I quit. I had my opportunity, and I backed out real fast. I was not as fast as everyone else. I was built very different than the traditional runner. They were recruiting in the dorm for rugby, so I was like, cool, it's like soccer and football. All right, I'll check it out. They did a contact practice. I was in it. It was the best thing ever. I said, my mom's going to hate this. She wouldn't let me play football. I get to tackle people. This is like win-win. And for me, rugby was the perfect sport. It was contact-oriented. I was a little bit aggressive. I played in the back line at Bowdoin. I graduated. My coach, Mary Beth, found a club program for me to play, and they swapped my position. They told me I was a goon and I had bad hands, which tracked because I was a pretty powerful center, so it was hard to tackle me. So I played a lot of crash ball, which meant if you were outside of me, you probably weren't going to get
Yeah.
I wasn't going to pass to you.
Yeah.
So in women's rugby, they moved me into the front row. And from there, I had the opportunity to start playing All-Stars. And All-Stars took me to territorials, which then brought me to a U.S. camp. And then I played 8 years for the U.S. And through that, I had already started like coaching when I was playing women's club. I started a high school program with some of my teammates in Chicago, and that kind of got me into coaching. And when I retired from the U.S., they didn't let me go, and I was really lucky with some of the people I worked with. I was given some opportunities to coach within the U.S. pathway. So I head coached our U.S. U18 women, started a U16 program within that structure, and some of those players right now are representing the U.S. at both the 15s and 7s
Wow.
level, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah.
And then I worked with the U.S. U20s, and I also coached the senior women in the 2014 World Cup, which was the World Cup after my final World Cup as a player. That was a weird transition, coaching like your teammates, 'cause just a
I'm
year
sure.
before I was playing with them.
Yeah.
And like within that, I've just done a bunch of different things, like at administrative levels with like USA Rugby, and then just like different teams that I've worked with coaching wise. So
Wow.
it's been pretty exciting. Rugby, that's what I mean. Like rugby changed my life. It gave me confidence in my body, but I also learned to use my voice, and that I had leadership qualities. And
Yeah.
now I'm full-time coaching and getting to develop young women, and it's pretty exciting.
Giving back to it. Right?
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, it's crazy how that pathway, where it's taken you, what it's done for you, and now you have the opportunity to give back, which I think it almost comes full circle, which is that's
Absolutely.
awesome. Tony, hand it over to you.
Well, I have a really incredible story about getting into. No, I don't. Mine's not nearly as
That's okay.
as expansive as Farrah's. No, I think, for me, I grew up playing football. I was also a bit of a husky young man. Not the fastest, not the swiftest, not the most agile, but. So I was a lineman in football, American football, from 3rd grade through 12th grade. I had one game where I got to run the ball twice, scored a touchdown, greatest athletic accomplishment of my entire life, probably 5th or 6th grade. And then in high school, I also started playing lacrosse, and I found that I enjoyed the fast-moving nature of lacrosse and how it kind of almost never really stopped, and you could acquire these different skills just through practice. And so, when I got to college, I thought I would just kind of be in the gym and work out and work and go to school and earn a degree, and then I would be a football coach. And so every single day, I've told the story a few different times, but every single day, the captain of the rugby team, when I would walk by him, he would ask me if I wanted to play rugby. And, I said no. And the reason I said no, I don't always tell people this, but there was one guy on the team that was pretty massive, moved some serious iron in the gym, and I was petrified of him. And I was like, if people like that play rugby, there's zero chance that I'm ever playing that sport. And then I found out that he was a monster no matter what team he played for. And he just so happened to be on the team that I would play for. And I was like, well, as long as I don't have to tackle him, like I'm fine with it. And so I started to play rugby, and it was where it was just this perfect synergy of all the things that I had done in my life athletically, but then also neighborhood basketball, neighborhood tackle football, because I always asked to play tackle football because there was zero chance I was running away from anybody in tag football. So I figured well, at least if I run them over, they get 2 chances to tackle me, and I have to be really good. I have to tackle them once. That's the only shot I get. I couldn't tackle a paper bag in football. I was horrible with pads on for some reason. With the pads and the helmet, it just didn't work. When that pads and the helmet were gone, tackling became part of my calling card probably. And so I was able to combine these sports that didn't stop, basketball, lacrosse, those sorts of things, with the physicality and kind of the maybe aggressive outlet that I was looking for. And so it just kind of took me for a ride, and I loved everything about it from the very first tackle I made in a spring game against Orono. I just remember I don't even remember if I was tackling or I got tackled, but something happened on the sideline. I popped up, and I was the most alive I had ever felt in my entire life. And I was like, this is amazing. And from that point on, I was hooked. I managed to get one of my best friends hooked. And then we had some struggles with players' numbers. And so we managed to get all of our other friends in. And all of a sudden, we had all these athletes that had come from various backgrounds, and it just made it not just a successful team on the field, but we were also brothers and super tight, and half of us lived together in a house. And so it just became this amazing thing. And that's part of what I want to create for a lot of my teams, is to make sure that they have those connections, yes, on the field, and we're all, doing the right things and staying connected there. But off the field, I want their teammates to be people they want to hang out with. And you might sometimes get mad at your brother a little bit, and you might not like them very much in a moment, but you still ultimately love them. And I think that that's something that our team has really started to come together, and that L word as teammates has been tossed around quite a bit, especially at the tail end of this season. And so that's just it captured me. And then I want to also, as Farrah said, kind of give that connection and that experience back to other people.
Yeah. And I'm glad you say that about the camaraderie, right? It's the group setting. I think that's something that's overlooked a lot of the time if you're not in it. But you can see it, right? You can even see it around campus. All your rugby guys, they all walk around together, and they're a tight knit group. And even with you, Farrah, as well, they come into the office and they're all together all the time. And they go ask our men's lacrosse coach Bill Scott for candy. Shout out Bill. But they all go in and they ask him for, but they're always together, right? And that's what makes a good team. That's how you build connections. That's a life skill that'll take you as far as you want to take it, right?
For sure.
So headed back into the present now, and you mentioned your season briefly again. Yeah. What would you say your favorite moment from your season was?
Without a doubt, it has to be. It's kind of a collection of moments, right? So it's our win against Tufts. We, as we did with a few different games this season, we started with 14 players against 15 players, so we're already a man down. Mm-hmm. And they have historically, over the years, had a fairly strong rugby program, and we were playing away, and we got to have the bus, and it was the trip down, and just so the whole, I think, experience was summed up in the elation that we had as a team when the final whistle went, because we were holding on for dear life at the end of the match. I mean, we had one guy with a bum leg, we had another guy with a bum shoulder, we had a couple other guys that, you know, had only joined us several days before and officially and had watched some practices, but like they were in it, you know, for the first time. And so, you know, everything just worked and we played so hard as a team. And then like when that whistle went, like just every single one of us were just so overjoyed. And it was also inspiring because that showed us what we could do when we had mostly the numbers that you need on a team to play a game. Many of our other games, you know, we would be down to 12 or 11 players by the end of it. And so it just makes defense much, much more challenging. And so the favorite moment had to be like the whole day, the whole experience. And one of the quietest bus rides home I've ever experienced because I think everyone was so knackered that they were just sleeping for the 3-hour ride home. But that also made it nice and enjoyable.
That's a great story. I'm happy for you guys, happy for your program. I mean, that's an incredible feat. Just coming out of almost nowhere into this year to be able to get a win against a good school like Tufts. I'm happy for you guys, and
it was great. Would you like to go?
Hi.
So Farrah,
she's back.
Your favorite moment from this season?
I'm with Tony. I feel like it's really hard to pick a single moment.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really like a collection. Probably starts with the very first game. I think as a coach, you always in your head, like you're prepared, like you don't go into anything thinking that you're not going to win because if you do, then you're clearly in the wrong profession. But when you start your season and you have 7 and 7 is the roster and the teams that you play are rostering 12 or 15 and probably traveling with at least twice the number that you have, which means every 7s match you play, there's probably someone with really, really, really fresh legs coming onto the field. You're hoping for competitive, right? So we come out into that first match against Bowdoin, which is, I'm an alumni, so we won that first game. And I think that for me was like one of the first of the collection of like moments where like we surprised ourselves. I think the team was not expecting to go out there. Bowdoin is traditionally a very, very strong program. They have been. They're one of the very first varsity programs. They have deep, deep numbers in terms of their roster, excellent coaching, and some very, very talented players. So for us to put our first win on the scoreboard against a program like that was pretty exciting for the team, and it made them hungry. And then I think the next probably moment for me would be everyone on the team having an opportunity to score their first college try. I think the most exciting for that was my player Adriana. She's a forward, so forwards don't always get glory moments. And I put her on the wing, and in 15 she's not a wing, but she looked at me and said, "Coach, are you sure you want to do that?" And I was like, "Yes." Gave her some roles. I started writing like special things for them that they need to do on an index card and giving it to them before a game. And she was on the far corner of the game. She did exactly what I told her was her superpower, scored a try, and you could hear her scream with so much excitement all the way across the field. And I think those moments, seeing them realize what they're capable of, despite the fact that we were kind of battling uphill, felt a little bit like Sisyphus with like rolling the rock, like gotta win, but we're still only 7. And probably finishing out our season starting with only 6 healthy bodies on the field and having moments where we had 5 and still finishing undefeated. I think it speaks to the players that I brought in, to the grit, the determination, the potential that they have, and the care that they have together, because as coaches, we're not on the field. So when we give them tools and the ability to figure out what it is they're really good at, and then hope that the system we've created allows them to express those things. So when it does happen and you see them grow in those moments, I think that's what's exciting for Tony and I both, because I think that is what our season was us taking 2 teams that comparatively to the competition, we're not set up to be successful. But giving our players the space to grow as individuals, grow as athletes within rugby, and be successful and end the season hungry to come back after it.
I think that's a really powerful message. It speaks to both of you that you've been able to have success too. I don't want to downplay that, because you were the ones who had to bring all these student athletes in, coach them up, train them, develop them, right? And that has shown this fall in improvements and building blocks. And like I said, I think that's a really powerful message. So Tony, I'll hand it back to you. We have 3 more questions.
Yeah.
What are your priorities headed into next season, whether that's the spring or that's the fall?
Oh my gosh, priorities. I think in the immediacy, looking at the spring, it's one, to get our guys healthy, to try to build up as much physical resilience as we possibly can. I think there are a few bodies on the squad that would love to put on a little extra armor before the spring season comes on. And so I think that's, I've actually met with the strength and conditioning coach yesterday, and we kind of talked about some things that we're looking for the spring. And so, that's the spring. We're really looking to add a couple of pieces for the spring. We have some individuals that I think may be joining us, which will help us give us some additional numbers. Honestly, if I'm being fully transparent, I think we would love to play the type of rugby that gets rewarded by being invited to go to the national tournament at the end of April. I think that would be a monumental success. It's going to require a lot of luck and a lot of hard work, but that would be kind of the immediate goal. I think looking forward to next fall, first and foremost, it's bringing in more players, more athletes. I've made a college rugby coaching career out of, helping just general athletes learn to fall in love with rugby and want to be better at it. And so, it's, for me, I want to get more of those guys. I would love to see more Maine athletes, to be honest with you. I'd love to see more local guys want to come here for the experience of playing rugby here, and not have it be an afterthought, but have it be the thing that they're coming here to do. And then we also, we'd like to add some more rugby playing pieces from around the country and around the world, to continue to give us this unique culture and unique flavor. We want to be playing a game this weekend next year, which would mean that we would have qualified for playoffs. And I think that's the 2-pronged goal, one in the spring and one for next fall.
That's a great goals to aim for, to reach for. I think it's important to have goals in the first place, because if you're not working towards something, then what are you doing in the short term, right?
Yeah, you can't do anything halfway.
Yeah, if you're going to do something, it's worth doing 100%, right?
Let's go for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
That's a good answer, though.
There you go, Farrah.
Oh, thanks. Hi.
Your priorities for next spring or next fall, or both?
So priorities for next spring, I think similar. It is healthy, making sure athletes are resilient, continuing to track their physical development, but also their intellectual development. I think at the end of the day, I'm looking to create critical thinkers, and rugby is a really dynamic environment. There's a lot of decision making, a lot of pieces are happening and moving quickly. And I think the way both Tony and I are looking to play the game requires that at any given moment you have 7 or 15 decision making playmakers on field, which for some athletes is pushing them into an uncomfortable space, because not all coaches are traditionally saying, I want my forwards to decision make as much as my backs are doing. And that's something that both of us are trying to build. So that also is, there's an intellectual piece to the game that we're trying to develop as well. I think in terms of competition, we built such a strong foundation for sevens that I am hoping that we will pull in some excitement from campus for some athletes who are playing sports right now that are a little bit excited about the success of the program and are curious, that might come out in the spring to add to the roster. And we're looking to hopefully go into postseason for sevens. What that looks like for us in those planning stages we're in an interesting space as a Division III NCAA program, so we do have some options out there within the varying structures that have competition. So I think in my perfect world, I'm trying to get to 2 different postseason competitions. In terms of the fall, it is growing that roster so that we can hit the ground rolling for 15s. And I think in year 1 for me playing 15s, it's being competitive. Year 2, it's looking at postseason eligibility, and what that looks like is all going to hinge on what our competition looks like as the NCAA grows, and also looking at where we're located geographically with the colleges that surround us in that kind of 4.5 hour bubble. Being able to look at some cross competition, I think that also benefits us, but also benefits the growth of the game. So I have a lot of things I'm plotting. But at the end of the day, it's like my strategic plan is we're doing something similar to Bowdoin, that in a 5 to 6 year span we're competing at the Division II level.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm glad you touched upon the intellectual piece, right? It's that critical thinking, because that's not just a rugby thing. That's not just a sports thing. That's a life thing too, right? So, like for example, if I take calculus in high school, I'm not necessarily using calculus now, but it's teaching you that critical thinking, right? Unless I'm an engineer or something in a similar field, it's the critical thinking, right? And that's what you two are building and trying to teach. And I think that's really valuable. I think it's an underrated thing that not a lot of people touch on, but yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So now, I always like to end these with some fun questions. So we'll send it back to Tony real quick. And I've asked everyone I've had on, I've asked this question.
Okay.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
If you're gonna be dumb, you better be tough. No, I'm just kidding. I live that every single day. No, oh my gosh. I have received so many bits of information. I've probably forgotten more amazing bits of information than I've remembered, unfortunately.
Well,
for all of my mentors.
Some would say the stuff you do remember is the best stuff too, right?
I think something that I have probably tried to embody is kind of, that golden rule that you learn when you're hopefully very small, and allow that to kind of transcend into everything that I do, which is to treat other people the way that you want to be treated. I think as a coach, as a teammate, as a player, as a husband, as a father, a member of my community, I think if I can go into all those situations treating other people how I would like to be treated, and also kind of making them feel the way that I would like to be made to feel in those situations, that really for me has been something that I've been striving to do over the last little while, and especially as I'm more conscious of it. But I would say it'd probably be, treat other people as like you would want to be treated, and if you start there, I think a lot of good things happen.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. I've heard that. I'm sure you've heard that, Farrah. But I think that's great advice. Farrah, you
right.
thought of something?
Mac, I'm always thinking, you know this.
Okay. Yes.
I think it's probably twofold. I think one of those lessons is to give yourself grace, to allow yourself the space to grow, and that mistakes are okay, because those are the moments that you are learning the most valuable lessons. If we all dropped into the world perfect, we wouldn't need parents, school. We wouldn't really need much of anything, because we would just go about and be like, clock it, I got this. But that's not the reality. Is we often do make a lot of mistakes over the duration of our lifetime, and those moments are how we develop and we grow as individuals. So I think giving yourself the space to do that, not just as a person, but also athletically, I think that's a big one. And I think kind of running parallel to that is, don't be afraid to be true to who you are. Be authentic, and put yourself out in the world, in that space. Be comfortable in your skin, and some people will digest that and some people won't, and that's okay. You don't you don't need everyone to like you. You need everyone to accept and respect who you are.
Yeah, that's valuable. I'm glad you. Yeah, I think that respect thing is huge. Not just sports, obviously, but life too, right?
Yes.
All right. So this is another. Could be loaded, but it's also fun.
You get to go first this time.
You get to go first, Farrah.
Oh, yay!
Let's just say you weren't our head women's rugby coach at Thomas, or you
Oh,
couldn't, or you.
That's a lead-in.
Let's say, what would you be doing for a career if it didn't involve rugby, and why?
Ooh, okay, that's a really interesting question because I've had so many different jobs. If you've ever seen the show In Living Color, you'd understand. Gosh, I'd probably be somewhere in like education or youth development, to be honest. I think a fun fact about me that surprises people is I spent 3 years teaching in pre-K and kindergarten. I was an assistant teacher, 1 year in an autistic pre-K class. So I have a lot of patience, and then 2 years in a full inclusion kindergarten classroom, and about 5 years working in youth development, like nonprofit. So I'd probably be somewhere still in that space.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I was a nanny for a really long time too.
Interesting. But I think there's a lot of similarities there too, right? You're learning, you're educating,
Yes,
and you're helping people to develop themselves, not just athletically, like we are now, but intellectually, like you touched on before.
Yeah, I think like the fun thing I did with like my after school program was taking away your traditional like board games and bringing logic-based games and watching the kindergarten kids completely tool like middle school kids, just because they're free thinking comes so much more natural to them.
Yeah.
And seeing them out logic kids that are like twice their age, that was always fun. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. All right, Tony.
Rocco would rock those games.
Oh, yes, he would
Yeah.
do very well. This is my first opportunity to be a full-time sports coach. It's always been a part-time thing for me, even though probably mentally I probably put full-time effort into it every place I've been. My other profession is fitness and health and wellness and coaching, and I think, if I weren't doing this, I would probably still be doing that full time. I think I've discovered over the last few years that every experience that I've had in my life, every course that I've done, every whether it's motivational speaking, whatever it is, all those things like have created, like, I am just a coach. Like that is really who I am. That's what I've always wanted to be. I thought it was a specific sport, but I've come to realize over time that I just want people to be their best, whatever that looks like. And so, whether it's health and wellness, whether it's success, whether it's, trying to figure out how to do more of the things that make us successful and less of the things that seem to sabotage us. Like that would be what I would be continuing to do, which is just coach other people to be their best and help them get to and experience the lives that they would like to have the most. Yeah,
and I think both of your answers, that's a powerful goal, powerful a mission almost, I would say. But yeah, I think that's all the time we have today. So I want to thank you both again for coming on. I'm looking forward to next spring to see both of your teams compete out on the field. But yeah, thanks again for coming on, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for having us, Mac.
Of course.
It was a pleasure as always.
Good. Thank you, guys.
Terrier Talk signing out.